Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Stoller. This is my brother, David. We are Sharegiver Solutions, and this will be our inaugural podcast to try to present the overall perspective of Sharegiver Solutions. And David is the sharegiver. He's been a caregiver for his bride, Barbara, for almost 15 years, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And I've been the observer, which is kind of what I've done my whole career. And having watched David and seen the evolution of this, terrible disease, we've decided to create Sharegiver Solutions to try to help other people navigate their way through this very difficult situation and perhaps make it easier, more gratifying, more satisfying, and more effective. So David kind of broke it down to three major areas. The first being mindset, which is critical if you're going to be an effective and positive caregiver. The second is game plan, which he has developed through the years in terms of the actual plan for caring. And the third is networks, which we really believe is a critical support-based area. And the two networks we feature prominently are family and friends, who can certainly share in the process and the activities, and then the global network of caregivers, which right now in the United States alone, there are about 16 million family member caregivers like David who did not seek the job, did not anticipate the job, and are faced with doing the job.
Yeah, and that's just on dementia alone.
That's correct.
I mean, there's as many as 50 million caregivers that are dealing with other disabilities.
Right. With the other disabilities, certainly caregiving in any of those regards is difficult, and it's added on to everything else you already do in your life.
Correct.
But with dementia, there's obviously the inability to communicate, which is severe. But, go into a little bit about the structure of Sharegivers and the mindset, game plan, networks configuration.
Sure. Well, as Rob said, I've got into this. I've been involved with caregiving for almost 15 years, and my wife was diagnosed formally in 2010. And she and I have explored all different kinds of therapies, pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical, biomedical, technology-based. We have participated in clinical trials. We have participated in healing journeys, all with the hope of somehow slowing the progression of this disease, if not staying it or reversing it. And thus far, nothing has proven successful. It may be that just by our shared commitment over the years to trying to find a way through this, we have slowed the progression, because that's also part of mindset, which we're going to talk about, that we really face this together to try to find our way through it or around it. But I, along the way, started to understand, as I observed myself in this journey, that it was a lot easier for me to feel that I was productive and even learning along the way if I identified as what we call a sharegiver as opposed to a caregiver. Caregiver suggested to me one way, that you had a patient and you were caring for that patient, and if you're a family member who wasn't trained, who isn't equipped, who may not have the resources, and have other things going on in his or her life, it is a huge challenge, and it can be a deadly one, as statistics demonstrate that it's caregivers that get sicker, that suffer greater stress, emotional turmoil, depression, and quite often end up getting dementia themselves. So being aware of this, it seemed to me that there could be an important way to deal with this, and that was sharing the experience. And that really was the birth of Sharegiver Solutions.
Well, the basic foundation of all of that is that you took a very proactive approach.
Correct.
And I think that in and of itself is a critical hurdle. I think there are some people, because of the reasons you just named, that can be crushed by this situation. So, it's you're either crushed by it or you crush it somehow.
Right. Or you accommodate it in a more productive way than you could have. And, sharing is really at the core of what we're talking about. In mindset, it is sharing the experience and seeing what you can make of it. And we talk about mindset, and we'll go into this a lot more in subsequent podcasts, but we see it as, three different things. Mindset first as sort of a stoic mindset where you are constantly working around what otherwise you could be pulling your hair out over. You're reframing, you're anchoring your experience to a different way of looking at it. And if practiced, it becomes much more routine. I know I hear myself in the past when my wife would do something, rip a page out of my book, which, that can be upsetting. And I would hear myself saying, "How could you?" And then realizing that wasn't serving any purpose. It was upsetting me, and it was upsetting Barbara. So there's a stoic aspect to being able to keep your emotion in check.
Which isn't really different from dealing with any setback.
Correct.
Any situation in life that is disappointing or difficult.
Exactly.
Or places
this
you
just happens to be more of a constant challenge.
Yeah.
And seeing yourself, in fact, almost like in a game, being challenged. How can you keep your cool in this moment? A second aspect to mindset is what I refer to as a growth mindset. So that not only are you working around things, but you are looking for opportunities to advance your own learning, to nourish your own curiosity. You're in it. You're in it to become more enriched and better, even under these circumstances. And it changes the dynamic dramatically. And the last aspect of mindset, again, to be discussed more fully, is what I call a strategic mindset, where you do almost your own audit of yourself, of what are your operating beliefs. And for this, if this is really successful, if your engagement as a sharegiver is really successful, what's the most important aspects of that? What would that mean? And if you can identify that, then how do you organize yourself to accomplish it? What enables it?
And again, when you say, what does that mean? I think what distinguishes Sharegiver Solutions from other initiatives and organizations is that it is about the caregiver. What does it mean for you?
Correct.
And if it's good for you, it'll be good for your loved one. But again, the foundation initially is when you get that diagnosis, it's a long-term diagnosis.
Right.
It's not something that you can have treated and it'll go away. It's not going away. And in fact, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get better per se. Your situation can get better, and that's what we're trying to create. But you have to have, the understanding that this person is not going to be cured, and it's going to get tougher.
Yeah, getting that diagnosis, and anybody that's gotten it and the person that they were with will never forget it. And in our case, it was Dr. Gayatri Devi in New York. Barbara she had subjected Barbara to a PET scan, a spinal tap, an MRI, all used to diagnostically, and she sat us down and said, well, it's clear from these tests that Barbara, who was 58 at the time, you have early onset Alzheimer's dementia. That was like a thunderclap because, as you're saying, to Barbara, that was a death sentence. And to me, it was incredibly sad, and also realizing that this is a long road ahead.
Your life just changed dramatically.
Just changed. Everything changed.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't a great surprise, which is why we were visiting the neurologist in the first place. So, as you teed this up, sharing is at the core of our approach, which we think is novel. It's not one way. This is two-way. And the sharegiver is seizing this as an opportunity to become more of a person, more of a caregiver, more of an engaged individual.
Partner.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a twist, but we think it's really important. The second aspect, as you mentioned, game plan, is also, a big deal, because all of us that find ourselves in the role of a caregiver have to figure out how to fill up the time. And again, it's all variable depending on the circumstances and the severity of the impairment. But in all cases, you want it to be as edifying as it can be for the person you're caring for, but it can also be deadening to the caregiver unless you can think about ways of participating. And so all the different activities that we have discussed and explored and prescribed as activities all involve, one way or another, the sharegiver participating. And in fact, in my case, because Barbara is much less discerning, I like it to be things that she enjoys. At this point, I like it to be things that she enjoys or might take her back to prior experience. But in any event, they need to be things I'm interested in as well.
Well, and that plan and perspective evolved over time.
Absolutely.
Obviously, when you just got the diagnosis, Barbara was on top of it as you were, and she knew the consequences and what you guys were looking at. And I think your activities were probably customized toward what Barbara had traditionally liked to do.
Correct.
Which has changed a little bit. But another distinguishing characteristic that really drew me in to Sharegiver Solutions is that there are practical solutions.
Right.
There are a lot of people and organizations that provide emotional support, which is important, that provide resources for how to find expertise in different areas, which is important. But what you've done and what Sharegiver is doing really was founded on your whiteboard that you'll discuss. But the point is, it gives the caregiver or sharegiver a finite plan to face the day, the week, the month, because I can only imagine, and I'm happy not to be in that situation, but I've seen it where these millions of people wake up every day and say, what am I going to do today? What are we going to do today?
Right.
And Sharegiver Solutions provides you a template to create your own activity schedule.
Right. What's interesting about it, and Rob is referring to in my entryway into the house, the side entryway, is a big whiteboard. And on it, it says, it has down the right side key areas that I want to make sure that we cover, that are social, that are intellectual, that are spiritual, that are health related, just as general categories. And then at the top it says today is Christmas Eve, December 24, 2020, Thursday. And then I'll list basic blocks of time of what we're going to be doing. Barbara every morning comes down and stands in front of that whiteboard, even if it's not really intelligible to her. She's fascinated by it, and she knows that it's somehow keyed to what's ahead of her in that day.
Yeah.
And so, the whiteboard is symbolically important, and it's practically, very useful.
Yeah.
No question about
And
it.
I'm sure having some sense of regularity or schedule, or the fact that Barbara still wants to see the whiteboard is part of her mindset.
Correct. And she was, this goes back to a time where it was more understandable to her.
Sure.
And she had greater command of her own words and thinking. And the other thing I'd say is, for me as the caregiver, I have my own whiteboard. It's tied to it because, I've got a long life ahead of me as well. And in some ways I live it in parallel with Barbara. We don't have the same kind of relationship that we had before. And I love my wife, and I'm committed to her
Obviously.
fully. But I also, with the very strong encouragement of my daughters, which will be the subject of a separate podcast, want to make sure that I have as fulfilling a life as I can, because there are too many people in this situation that sacrifice their lives to their caregiving, which is a shame, because you can do both, especially as the impairment becomes more and more advanced. It's easy enough to be sucked down into the same
I'm
tragedy.
sure it's a lonely situation.
Yeah.
There's guilt involved.
Yeah.
There's self-neglect in the interest of your caring. And those are, as you said, those can present significant problems down the road. And the third facet of caregivers is the networks. And
Right.
I think you're going to find and tell everybody how valuable that kind of support is.
Yeah, networks we see as the third leg. And actually, I see three networks. The first is your personal support network, which is friends and family. It's really important, and it's so often neglected or not utilized to what it really can provide.
And people do want to help.
People want to help. But what is so typical is you will run into somebody, or it's a family member or a friend, and they will say, if you ever need something, I'm available. Well, you never call on them, and they never call. And particularly if they see, given the passage of time, that their relationship has become that much more attenuated with, the person who was a friend or a family member. So you can't rely on people to volunteer. That said, they want to volunteer.
Yeah.
And they want to be guided in how to do that. So from a personal point of view, what I have done, and again, subject of a separate podcast, is created a calendar, a schedule. And I will call people, and when I see them and they'll say, if you ever need anything, I said, well, in fact, I do. Here's a calendar. You pick out a day, it can be 6 months from now, that you can spend a couple of hours with Barbara and, give me a break, and I'll make sure that you understand the circumstance and feel comfortable with it. And maybe you don't. Maybe I'll stay and we'll all participate, but that's how you can help. Or you can bring a meal sometime that is enormously helpful. But here, sign up. Here it is.
Yeah. Well, the irony there, or the issue there, at least for a lot of people, myself included, and probably you too, is a basic difficulty in asking for help.
Sure.
And that's part of the mindset. And the irony is, as you say, they do want to help.
They want to help.
They'd like to be asked. but asking for help is just a difficult thing for human nature, from a human nature standpoint.
Exactly. And so there's the personal network, and it's really important. The second network is the professional network, that there's a whole universe that's like your own galaxy of your primary physician, a neurologist, a speech therapist, perhaps, other professionals that are friends that you have included in your support network, where the support and the care they can provide is different. They're not necessarily intervening the same way, but they should be kept abreast of what's going on. Your lawyer, somebody that is aware of your finances. Sharing this experience means really sharing it with people that can help you, and you are going to need at some point along the way. So that's the second network, and I actually call it creating a map of those relationships, where you take the time, you identify all the people that you may need and would want to help, your key resources. And then the third, as you said, we call the mutual aid network. And this is the people that are sharegivers, especially as they come through our program, and we have a sort of a shared, understanding of this role, that become a global group that benefit from a sense of solidarity and growing competence that they share, and an understanding of their particular role. And also the fact that together as a large group, not only can they help each other by offering positive solutions that they've come across, but they become a significant advocacy group to advocate for people that are afflicted like this, to advocate for more money to go to research, to advocate for people that are family members stuck in these positions that are unpaid and unappreciated, and advocate for change.
Yeah. The disease has such an arc, and there are so many points along the journey where everything is different. The relationships are different. And the thing about the mutual aid global network is that there are people at every single point of this arc on any given day. And I think it's important that we mention our advice is not medical. David's not a doctor, nor am I. He is a lawyer, but we're not giving legal advice. This program has been created out of experience, out of your experience. But I don't think anything can be more valuable. And again, that's what attracted me to it and makes me believe in its efficacy, because everybody, I don't think most people have the same capacity that you do of compartmentalizing things and carrying on so many activities, as well as devoting full time to being a caregiver. But everybody is going to face the same things you face. The disease doesn't care,
right?
And it's a consistent beast.
As Rosalind Carter said, everybody has either been a caregiver, will be a caregiver, or will need one.
Yeah.
In the future,
Right.
Nobody escapes this one way or another.
Yeah.
And that was really the great motivation. And we both bring a sense of mission to this. And I'll speak for my brother, who's not only been a noted videographer and documentarian over the years, but has interviewed dozens, if not hundreds, of people that suffer various disabilities. And I think including through his own public television program, and I think what has impressed me about that, and I think was a real hallmark of his experience, is how he found these qualities in these people that were, admirable and remarkable, that given what they were suffering, that they really rose to the challenge of making the most out of their own life. So that predisposition was there in Rob. And even though he said earlier that he was just an observer of me with Barbara, he's been more than that. He's, really shared, not insignificantly in the experience of this.
Well, what my experiences have given me, and I've received a lot more than I've given in these exchanges and relationships, but it all comes down to mindset. And every time somebody, whether they're quadriplegic or blind or otherwise completely debilitated, tell me how good life is, that's life-changing for me. And not only has it caused me to be constantly aware of how blessed I am, it's also shown me the human spirit is extraordinary and indomitable. And I've always understood that if these people can tell me and anyone else who wants to listen that life is good, then I know there's great possibility here.
And unfortunately, the specific universe we're talking about of dementia, that ability to appreciate one's own life and be self-aware diminishes to the point that it doesn't exist. And it's incredibly sad. So they don't really have that, the blessing of awareness and intellect that many others have.
Right. But again, for the caregiver, even though it is a difficult, potentially debilitating job to do, but if you can get to the point where, despite all of it, and because of all of it, in fact, the way you look at it, life is good.
Yeah, you have a richer life from it. And you're healthier. And you're happier.
Yeah.
So.
And feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Well, that's the introduction. I hope that was helpful. I believe this will be helpful. And whereas neither of us is a medical expert, we will be presenting medical experts in different fields to provide more technical and definitive advice. This is what David is able to do, is help you be a better caregiver, be a more active sharegiver, hopefully become more able to ask for help, which I think is a valuable lesson to share.
Yeah, and I would also say, in terms of our guests, we have a whole lineup of people that are everything from psychotherapists to neurologists to family doctors. But in all those cases, the focus is still going to be on caregiving.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to be on the science of the disease itself.
Correct. Yeah.
Although, and one thing we didn't talk about, well, there are many things we didn't talk about, but one of the things that we also feel very strongly about as a caregiver is sharing what we have come to learn about this disease and becoming examples of prevention in the way we live our lives, because there is a science of prevention that's powerful, as well as being advocates to younger people who should understand that if they follow certain guidelines, which are diet and fitness and stress management and sleep and neural, nourishment, they can prevent maybe to 90 or 95% getting dementia themselves.
Yeah,
so this is also part of the mandate of caregiving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dealing with your situation, but also helping others prevent the possibility of ending up in that situation.
Yeah, how important is that? And
yeah.
That's really part and parcel of this role.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this, found it useful, and there's everything we've mentioned has so much more, is so fertile a field that we believe and we hope we can be a help to so many people who need it.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.